lesson, we're going to take a look at creating proxy files. But before we get into it, what is a proxy file? A proxy file is a very, very small file that is created on your computer that is a highly compressed version of your video. So let's say you shot a video in 4K and you are going to go and edit that file. That's a really large video file, anywhere from 2 to 6 gigabytes, depending on the length of your video. Well, for Premiere Pro to edit that file, it's a huge file and it's a lot of processing power for it to try and play that back. So what you can do is create a proxy file, which will make a very small version of it, and play that file. And then when you go to export it, intelligently switch back to the high resolution full 4K file on the export. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to create that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm in Premiere Pro here, and I'm going to import a piece of footage. Once I've done that, I'm ready to go ahead and create the proxy file. Now, before I create a proxy, I need to set up my proxy presets, which will allow me to create a proxy file very easily inside of Adobe Premiere. I'm going to come over here to Media Encoder. Now, if you've never used Media Encoder before, don't panic. I'm going to walk you through the basics of it, but essentially, to put it in simple terms, Media Encoder is the Swiss Army knife of video encoding. This thing will take any file you bring into it, encode it, bring it into another application, and it's awesome. I love using Media Encoder. So we're going to come here, we're going to click on this little plus, and we're going to create an encoding preset. Once in here, we have a lot of different settings. We're going to ignore most of the settings, but there are a few settings we do need to change. Preset name, we'll do that at the very end. Format, we want to change it to QuickTime. The reason for that change is that's going to allow us the most control of how the proxy is created. Based on preset, it doesn't really matter what you put in this box because we're going to change it anyway. I'm going to leave it set to the default, but you can change it to whatever you want. If you really want to change it, you can select GoPro Cineform YUV 10-bit. It will save you a little bit of time. But I'm just going to go ahead and do it manually myself. For video codec, we are going to go ahead and say GoPro Cineform. And the reason I use GoPro Cineform is because it's cross-platform. If I ever have to switch from a Windows computer over to a Mac or a Mac over to a Windows computer, my proxy files are already set for that cross-platform. If I were to do Apple ProRes, I would be locked into Apple systems, which for me isn't a big deal because I am on a Mac, but if I go over to Windows, I would have problems later on. So I just like to have that option of being able to flip between the two systems because every once in a while I do have to use a Windows system. Not often, but once in a while. Quality, we are going to change that from 4 all the way down to 1. I do not need high quality files. All these are going to be used for as proxy files. I don't need high quality because they're just proxy files. They're not even going to be seen. For the width and height, I'm going to go ahead and set this to 1280 by 720. Now, if it does this where it automatically changed my height to 853, that's not really what I want. Click the chain, and now I can type in whatever number I want there. I want to use 720, and we are good to go there. Frame rate, this should be the same frame rate as your original video file. So to get that, we're going to go back to Premiere, and I am using 29.97. So 29.97 is what we're going to use. For field order, I'm going to use progressive. And for the aspect ratio, I'm just going to use square pixels. YUV 10-bit, everything else can stay the same. Now, this is where we're going to make another change. We're going to come over to Effects, and we are going to scroll down to Image Overlay. Once in Image Overlay, I can go ahead and choose a file. Now, the reason we're doing this is because Premiere doesn't make it super clear as to whether you're working with a proxy file or working with the full resolution. It's actually virtually impossible to tell the difference by default. There's one little indicator, but if you're not looking, you could miss it. I like to make it a little bit more obvious visually. So we are going to go ahead, and I have provided for you in the description of this video a proxy file overlay. And there we go. And again, that file will be available for download in the description of the video. For the position, I'm going to go ahead and set it to bottom right because I don't need it dead center in the video. It's just a little watermark, a little bug. It's more for me than anything. So bottom right is fine. And everything else we can leave alone. The last thing we're going to do is we're just going to name it Justin's Proxy Preset Encoding. And click OK. And we're halfway there. So the next step is click that plus again. Now we're going to create an ingest preset because the encoding preset is for media encoder to use. The ingest preset is what Premiere is going to use to be able to transfer the file between Premiere and After Effects. Or media encoder and Premiere, not After Effects. So let's go ahead and change that. So Justin's Proxy Preset Ingest. Pretty similar. I just added a different word at the end. For all of this, it's super simple. We're going to transcode files to destination. We're going to browse for a location. It does not matter where you put them. I'm going to stick them in this Adobe folder just because it's there. I don't care where this is going to go because there's a setting in Premiere Pro that allows me to change it or kind of override that setting. So for the format, we're going to go ahead and select QuickTime. And for the preset, we're just going to say our proxy preset encoding. It's pulled it from the presets we already created. It's set up. It's ready to go. It's going to use all the encoding settings we already set up. Click OK, and we are good to go. We're now ready to create that proxy file. So we're going to come back into Premiere. I'm going to right-click the file, scroll down, and I'm going to find Proxy, Create Proxy. Up is going to come the Proxy dialog box, and it looks really simple, and that's because it is. We're going to click Add Ingest Preset, and now we have to navigate to the proxy files, the preset files that After Effects, or why do I keep saying After Effects? Media Encoder created. So it's a little buried, but on a Mac, it's in the Adobe folder under Media Encoder, under the version number you're working with, under presets, and you're looking for your ingest preset. Double click that, and now you are ready to go. Now, the last thing we need to do is under destination, next to original media in proxy folder. We want that checked, and we are going to click OK. So it's going to create the job. And over in Media Encoder, you will see the job has been started. Now this is going to take a while because it's an HD file that's being re-encoded into 1280. So I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back, we'll take a look and see what it did. Okay, so the proxy file has finished creating, and I have the completion notice right here. Now let's go ahead and head back into Adobe Premiere Pro and bring this up into the project bin. Now by default, I am currently looking at the high resolution full version of this video, no proxy files whatsoever. I'm going to click on the plus. I'm going to add one little button, and that button is right here. And I'm going to do the same on this one. And let's click, whoops, wrong button. Let's click the button. Now I'm working with the proxy file, and I can tell because we did that overlay, and now I'm in proxy file. Now if I hit play,
started with Adobe Premiere.
You can see it is pretty buttery smooth. Whereas if I turn off the proxies and go to that high res, it's taking a little bit of time and kind of jumping between frames. It's not as silky smooth. Whereas with the proxies, it is like butter. So that is how to create proxy files and how to work with proxy files.